An exhausted police horse follows the little girl across the field, but when she realizes the reason, she gets emotional. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the sky with warm hues of orange and pink as Lily Harper crossed the flowery meadow with light steps. Her small feet glided through the tall grass while she hummed a random melody, distracted by the dance of insects in the air. Everything seemed peaceful until she noticed a muffled sound of hooves, an irregular rhythm that contrasted with the stillness around her. As she turned, her heart raced. A majestic police horse, visibly exhausted with sweaty flanks, slowly advanced toward her. The girl stopped, eyes widened with surprise and fear, but the animal didn't seem threatening. Its lowered head and glazed eyes conveyed more fatigue than any aggressive intention. Something was wrong, but she couldn't understand what. For a moment, she thought about running, but hesitated when she noticed a deep cut on the horse's flank, the darkened blood mixed with dust. Her gaze wandered to the misaligned saddle and the blood-stained badge hanging from one side. It was too strange to ignore. Carefully, she extended a trembling hand, lightly touching the animal's sweaty neck. The horse remained still, allowing the contact, as if understanding that the girl meant no danger. In that instant, she felt an inexplicable connection, a silent plea for help coming from that being so large and at the same time so vulnerable. Guided by impulse, she decided to lead him to an old abandoned barn she had known since she was little, a place where she used to play when summer stretched lazily. The path seemed longer that afternoon, with the sky gradually darkening and the distant sound of sirens hanging in the air. The horse limped with each step, but followed the girl with an almost desperate determination, as if this were his only chance. Along the way, Lily noticed human footprints mixed with hoof marks, some recent, veering off toward the nearby forest. Her heart raced again, but she kept her pace steady, feeling that giving up at that moment would be wrong. Inside the barn, golden rays of light streamed through the cracks in the roof, creating sparkling strips on the dusty floor. The girl looked for something that might help, finding an old towel forgotten in a corner and a bottle with some water left. Gently, she cleaned the horse's wound, which whinnied softly but didn't back away. It was then that she noticed a piece of fabric stuck in the cut, as if someone had tried to forcibly hold the horse. Whatever had happened, it wasn't a simple accident. And the feeling that something bigger was behind it all only increased when she found a folded and crumpled paper stuck under the saddle with a hastily written message: "I need help." Confused and frightened, Lily sat next to the horse, trying to understand what it meant. The sirens were now closer, mixed with the sound of voices and barking. Peeking through the half-open door, she saw uniformed men crossing the field, examining every corner in a hurry. Amid the tension, she remembered seeing police officers around town days before, questioning residents and showing crumpled photos. She had no idea what they were looking for, but a part of her was beginning to suspect that the injured horse had something to do with it. In the tiny town of Millfield, Vermont, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were as rare as visitors, Lily was known for her curious nature and imaginative mind. At 12 years old, she spent more time exploring the surrounding woods and fields than she did with other kids her age. Her parents, Sarah and Mike Harper, owned the only bookstore in town, which might explain Lily's preference for adventure stories over typical pre-teen activities. But nothing in her beloved books could have prepared her for what was unfolding. That late August afternoon, the abandoned Miller barn stood at the edge of her family's property, a remnant from a time when Millfield had been a thriving agricultural community. Now it was Lily's secret hideaway, filled with treasures only valuable to a child with an active imagination, a collection of unusual rocks, handmade fishing rods, and a journal filled with sketches of local wildlife. But today, the barn had a new occupant, one that didn't belong in her carefully curated world of childhood wonders. "It's okay," she whispered to the horse, her voice barely audible above the growing commotion outside. "I won't let anyone hurt you." The police horse, still wearing its ceremonial tack despite its disheveled state, seemed to understand her words. Its breathing, initially labored, began to steady as Lily continued to stroke its neck with gentle, rhythmic movements. Despite her fear, there was something comforting about the animal's presence, as if they were both caught in a moment that existed outside of normal time. The sound of walkie-talkies crackled through the thin wooden walls of the barn, and Lily could make out fragments of urgent conversation. Words like "search perimeter" and "expand the grid" drifted through the air, meaningless to her yet somehow ominous in their military precision. She clutched the folded note in her hand, the paper now damp with sweat. "I need help." 3 simple words that carried the weight of an unknown emergency. As the voices grew closer, Lily made a split-second decision. She tucked the note into the pocket of her overalls and grabbed an old horse blanket from a hook on the wall. With careful movements, she draped it over the police horse's back, partially covering the official saddle and its telltale insignia. If anyone glanced through the cracks in the barn wall, they might mistake it for an ordinary farm horse at first glance. At least that's what she hoped. "Lily? Lily Harper, are you out here?" The voice belonged to Officer Dan Thompson, a family friend who often stopped by the bookstore for coffee and conversation. His tone carried a mixture of concern and authority that made Lily's stomach twist with anxiety. She stepped toward the barn door, torn between hiding and revealing herself. The horse behind her shifted nervously, its hooves scraping against the dirt floor. In that moment of indecision, a beam of flashlight swept through the gap in the doorway, illuminating her face. "Lily, thank goodness," Officer Thompson said, relief evident in his voice as he pushed open the creaking door. "Your mum's been worried sick. It's getting late," and his words cut off abruptly as his gaze moved past her to the horse standing in the shadows. "Is that—" The silence that followed felt endless, stretching between them like an invisible barrier. Behind Officer Thompson, more flashlight beams crisscrossed the field, moving methodically toward the barn. In the distance, the wail of sirens grew louder, then suddenly cut off, leaving an eerie quiet punctuated only by radio static and muffled voices. "I found him like this," Lily said finally, her voice small but steady. "He's hurt. Someone hurt him." Officer Thompson moved slowly into the barn, his expression shifting from surprise to something more complex, a mixture of relief, confusion, and growing concern. He reached for his radio but paused, his hand hovering over it as he studied the horse more carefully. "This is Sergeant's Pride," he said, almost to himself. "He went missing during the—" He stopped, seeming to recalibrate his words for a 12-year-old's ears. "During an incident earlier today, we've had search teams out for hours." Lily stepped closer to the horse, suddenly protective. "What happened to him? Who did this?" Before Officer Thompson could answer, more figures appeared in the doorway. 3 more police officers, their uniforms dusty and their faces tense with unanswered questions. One of them, a tall woman with a severe ponytail, gasped audibly when she saw the horse. "He's alive," she said, the professional detachment in her voice cracking slightly. "Radio it in now." As one of the officers raised his radio to his lips, Lily noticed something strange. The atmosphere in the barn had shifted, charged with a tension that went beyond the simple relief of finding a missing animal. The officers exchanged glances loaded with meaning, a silent communication that excluded her entirely. "Lily," Officer Thompson said, kneeling down to meet her at eye level, "finding Sergeant's Pride might be the most important thing anyone's done today. You may have just helped us solve a very serious situation." The seriousness in his voice made Lily's earlier fears resurface. She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against the crumpled note. Something told her that the 3 simple words written on it were connected to whatever had these officers so on edge. "There's something else," she began, just as a new commotion erupted outside the barn. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly, and the barn door swung open wider. A man Lily had never seen before stood framed in the doorway, his suit rumpled and his tie loosened. Unlike the uniformed officers, he carried himself with an air of unmistakable authority. When he spoke, everyone in the barn fell silent. "You found him?" the man said, his eyes fixed on the horse with an intensity that made Lily step back involuntarily. "Where's the rider?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence, pressing down on everyone in the dusty barn. Lily looked from Officer Thompson to the man in the suit, confusion evident on her face. The rider? She hadn't seen any rider, just the horse standing alone in the meadow, wounded and exhausted. "There wasn't anyone with him," she said cautiously, her voice small against the weight of the moment. "He was by himself when I found him." The man in the suit, who still hadn't introduced himself, exchanged a significant look with Officer Thompson. Something unspoken passed between them, a tension that even Lily could perceive despite her young age. "I'm Special Agent Marcus Reed, FBI," the man finally said, his tone softening slightly as he addressed Lily directly. "And you are?" "Lily Harper," she replied, surprised at the steadiness in her voice. "I live at the bookstore in town with my parents." Agent Reed nodded, then turned his attention back to the horse. He approached the animal slowly, his movements careful and deliberate. Sergeant's Pride watched him warily, but didn't shy away when the agent ran a practiced hand along his neck and flank, examining the wounds. "We need to get a vet out here," he said to no one in particular. Then more quietly, almost to himself, "and we need to widen the search perimeter immediately." While the officers conferred in hushed tones, Lily stood by the horse, her hand resting protectively on his neck. The crumpled note in her pocket felt heavier by the minute, but something held her back from mentioning it. There was too much she didn't understand, too many undercurrents running beneath the surface of what appeared to be a simple case of a runaway police horse. "Lily, officer," Thompson said, breaking away from the group, "we need to get you home. Your parents are worried." "But what about him?" she asked, nodding towards Sergeant's Pride. "He needs help." "A veterinarian is on the way," Agent Reed interjected, his attention now fully on Lily. "You've done a good thing looking after him, but there are professionals who need to take over now." There was something in his tone, not quite dismissal, but a clear indication that her part in this mystery was over, that sparked a flicker of defiance in Lily's chest. This was her discovery, her connection with the horse. Being sent home like a child felt wrong, especially when she knew there was more to the story. "Can I come back tomorrow to see how he's doing?" she asked, attempting to sound casual. Before Agent Reed could respond, the female officer who had gasped earlier stepped forward. "My name is Officer Jesse Martinez," she said, her voice gentler than her appearance suggested. "I'll personally make sure you get updates on Sergeant's Pride. He's very important to our department." Something in Officer Martinez's eyes, a flicker of genuine emotion that contrasted with the professional demeanor of the others, made Lily trust her. She nodded, reluctantly accepting that it was time to leave. As Officer Thompson escorted her out of the barn and into the gathering twilight, Lily couldn't resist turning back for one last look. The scene behind her had transformed. Additional vehicles with flashing lights lined the dirt path, and more official-looking people streamed toward the barn. In the fading light, she could see Agent Reed speaking urgently into a cell phone, his free hand gesturing emphatically. The walk home took less than 15 minutes, but it felt much longer to Lily. Officer Thompson maintained a carefully casual conversation, asking about school and her summer activities, skillfully avoiding any mention of what had just transpired. By the time they reached the back door of the family bookstore, Harper's literary haven, Lily was burning with unasked questions. Dan, thank goodness, Sarah Harper exclaimed as they entered the kitchen attached to the back of the store. She rushed to embrace her daughter, relief evident in every line of her body. We were about to organize a search party ourselves. Where on earth have you been, Lily? Before Lily could answer, Officer Thompson intercepted smoothly. She was helping us with a situation out by the old Miller barn. Actually been quite the little hero today. Mike Harper, entering from the bookstore with reading glasses perched on his head, raised an eyebrow. A situation? That sounds ominously vague. Officer Thompson's laugh sounded forced even to Lily's ears. Nothing serious, just a police horse that wandered off during a training exercise. Lily here found him and was taking good care of him until we tracked them down. Lily opened her mouth to correct this sanitized version of events, but something in Officer Thompson's quick glance her way made her hesitate. There was a message there, a silent plea for discretion that she didn't fully understand, but instinctively respected. It was pretty cool, she said instead, attempting to match his casual tone. He's a beautiful horse. They're calling a vet to check on him. The conversation moved on, her parents asking a few more questions before the topic shifted to dinner plans and the new shipment of books that had arrived that afternoon. Officer Thompson declined their invitation to stay, citing paperwork that needed to be filed. At the door, he paused. "Hey, Lily," he said, his voice deliberately casual. "Maybe best not to mention too much about today to your friends for now. Sometimes these police matters can get complicated with too many cooks in the kitchen, if you know what I mean." After he left, the evening progressed with a strange normalcy that felt almost surreal to Lily. She went through the motions of dinner, homework review for the upcoming school year, and her bedtime routine, all while the crumpled note remained hidden in her pocket. When she finally retreated to her room, she carefully smoothed it out on her desk, studying the hastily scrawled message under the warm glow of her reading lamp. "I need help." 3 simple words, yet they carried the weight of urgency, of desperation. Who had written them, and why had they been hidden under the saddle of a wounded police horse? The questions swirled in her mind as she fell into a restless sleep, filled with dreams of running horses and mysterious shadows. The next morning broke clear and bright, a perfect late summer day in Vermont. Lily woke early, determined to return to the barn, despite the implied instruction to stay away. After a hasty breakfast, she told her parents she was going to meet her friend Emma for a bike ride, a small deception that tasted bitter but necessary. As she approached the Miller barn, Lily immediately sensed something different. The atmosphere of emergency that had pervaded the area the previous evening had been replaced by something more controlled, more methodical. 2 black SUVs were parked near the barn, and yellow police tape cordoned off a large area around the structure. Keeping to the tree line, Lily circled around until she found a vantage point that offered a clear view of the activity without exposing her presence. Through a gap in the trees, she could see people in uniform moving purposefully around the property. Some appeared to be searching the ground meticulously, while others took photographs and collected samples in small evidence bags. "They're treating it like a crime scene," she whispered to herself, the realization sending a chill down her spine. Despite the warm morning sun, "That's because it is one." The voice behind her nearly made Lily jump out of her skin. She whirled around to find Officer Martinez standing a few feet away, arms crossed over her chest, expression unreadable. Nordai was just," Lily stammered, caught completely off guard. "Coming to check on the horse?" Officer Martinez supplied, her tone neutral. "He's been transported to a veterinary hospital in Burlington. The wounds were significant, but not life-threatening." Relief flooded through Lily, followed quickly by confusion. "If this is about a hurt horse, why all of this?" She gestured toward the scene below them. Officer Martinez seemed to consider her words carefully before responding. Sergeant's Pride is a valuable police horse, but you're right, this response is about more than an injured animal. She paused, studying Lily with an intensity that made the girl shift uncomfortably. You found something yesterday, didn't you? Something you didn't tell us about. The note burned in Lily's pocket where she had placed it again this morning. How had Officer Martinez known? Had she been that obvious? Or was the woman simply that perceptive? She began, but was interrupted by a shout from below. Martinez, we need you down here! Officer Martinez's gaze remained fixed on Lily for a moment longer. Go home, Lily. This isn't a game, and it isn't a story from one of your parents. Books, real people could be in danger. Her voice softened slightly. I'll keep my promise about updates on the horse, but please stay away from this investigation. As Officer Martinez made her way down the slope toward the barn, Lily remained frozen in place, torn between the urge to flee and a burning curiosity that seemed impossible to ignore. The officer's words echoed in her mind. Real people could be in danger. Just as she was about to retreat, a movement at the edge of the forest caught her attention. A figure, tall, male, dressed in dark clothes, was watching the police activity from an even more secluded vantage point than her own. There was something in his posture, a tension that spoke of more than casual interest, that made Lily's heart race. Without conscious thought, she ducked lower behind the underbrush, instinctively hiding from this unknown observer. For a breathless minute, she watched as he continued to survey the scene below, occasionally making notes in a small book. Then, with a suddenness that startled her, he turned and melted back into the deeper shadows of the forest. Acting on impulse, Lily began to follow, careful to maintain her distance. Whoever this man was, he wasn't law enforcement. His furtive behavior made that clear. Could he be connected to the injured horse, to the mysterious note? The possibility was too intriguing to ignore, despite the warning still ringing in her ears. As she tracked the stranger deeper into the woods, Lily Harper had no way of knowing that she was stepping into a mystery far more complex and dangerous than anything she had ever imagined, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about her quiet hometown and the people in it. The forest grew denser as Lily followed the mysterious figure, careful to keep her footsteps light against the carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves. Sunlight filtered through the canopy above, creating dappled patterns that both illuminated her path and provided convenient shadows to duck into whenever the man paused or seemed about to turn around. Despite her caution, Lily nearly lost him twice, once when a squirrel darting across her path startled her into freezing, and again when the man unexpectedly changed direction, heading west instead of continuing north as he had been. Each time, she managed to spot him again just before he disappeared completely, his dark clothing a stark contrast against the vibrant greens and browns of the Vermont forest. After what felt like hours but was likely only 20 minutes, the trees began to thin, and Lily could make out a small clearing ahead. In the center stood a cabin, its weathered exterior suggesting age and neglect. The man approached it with the confidence of familiarity, producing a key from his pocket and unlocking the door without hesitation. Once he disappeared inside, Lily crept closer, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it might give her away. The cabin appeared to be one of the old hunting lodges that dotted this part of the state remnants from a time when Millfield attracted sportsmen from across New England. Most had been abandoned decades ago when the hunting regulations changed, though a few had been converted into vacation rentals. This particular cabin showed no signs of recent renovation. Its windows were grimy, the porch sagged slightly on one side, and the overall impression was one of long-term abandonment, except for the fresh tire tracks leading up to it and the modern padlock that had secured the door. Staying low, Lily made her way to the nearest window. The glass was too dirty to see through clearly, but a small crack in the corner provided a limited view inside. Through it, she could make out the man moving around what appeared to be the main room, talking animatedly into a cell phone. His voice was too muffled by the walls for her to make out specific words, but his agitated tone was unmistakable. As he paced, he gesticulated with his free hand, occasionally running it through his hair in what seemed like frustration. Whatever conversation he was having, it wasn't a pleasant one. Suddenly, he turned toward the window, and Lily ducked down just in time, her heart leaping into her throat. Had he seen her? For several agonizing seconds, she remained perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. When no sound of approaching footsteps followed, she cautiously raised herself just enough to peer through the crack again. The man had moved to a table in the center of the room, spreading out what looked like maps or large documents. He studied them intently, occasionally marking something with a pen. Lily strained to see more, but her limited viewport showed only fragments of the scene. Just as she was considering shifting position to get a better angle, the snap of a twig behind her froze her in place. Slowly, she turned her head, already knowing with dreadful certainty that she was no longer alone. "It's not polite to spy on people, young lady. Adults." The woman standing a few feet away wasn't much taller than Lily herself, but everything about her, from her alert posture to her evaluating gaze, radiated competence and authority. She wore hiking clothes that might have helped her blend into the forest, but the small bulge visible under her light jacket suggested a concealed weapon. I mean, Lily stammered, rising to her feet and instinctively backing away, only to bump against the cabin wall. The woman's expression remained neutral, neither threatening nor particularly reassuring. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence. You've been following Jason for the last 20 minutes, and now you're peeping through windows. The question is why?" Lily's mind raced, evaluating and discarding possible explanations. The truth seemed both the riskiest and the only viable option. "I saw him watching the police at the Miller barn," she said finally. "He looked suspicious, like he was hiding something." A flicker of surprise crossed the woman's face, quickly masked. "And you decided to follow a suspicious stranger into the woods?" There was a hint of incredulity in her tone. "That's not just unwise, it's dangerous." "I found the horse," Lily said, the words tumbling out before she could consider them. "Yesterday, Sergeant's Pride. He was injured and there was a note under his saddle asking for help." The change in the woman's demeanor was subtle but immediate, a slight tensing of her shoulders, a new intensity in her gaze. "What did you do with this note?" Lily hesitated, her hand unconsciously moving to her pocket. The woman's eyes tracked the movement, narrowing slightly. "I kept it," Lily admitted. "I didn't show it to the police." For a long moment, the woman said nothing, studying Lily with an inscrutable expression. Then, to Lily's utter surprise, she smiled, a small, tight gesture that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, Lily Harper, it seems you're more involved in this situation than anyone realized." The fact that the woman knew her name sent a wave of cold fear through Lily's body. She tried to keep her expression neutral, but suspected she was failing miserably. "How do you know who you are?" The woman finished for her. "Small town, big news, local girl finds missing police horse isn't exactly a headline that goes unnoticed in a place like Millfield." Before Lily could respond, the cabin door swung open, and the man Jason, the woman had called him, stepped onto the porch. His expression of shock quickly transformed into anger as he looked from Lily to the woman. "Catherine, what the hell? Why is there a kid here?" "Our young friend has been following you," Catherine replied calmly. "Apparently, she witnessed your surveillance of the scene at the barn and decided to conduct some surveillance of her own." Jason's gaze fixed on Lily, his eyes narrowing in assessment. "Is that right? Playing detective, are we?" Despite her fear, Lily felt a spark of indignation at his condescending tone. I'm not playing anything. I found the horse, I saw the note, and I want to know what's going on." Both adults stiffened at the mention of the note. "She has it," Catherine said quietly. "She didn't turn it over to the authorities." A complex series of emotions crossed Jason's face. Surprise, relief, and something that looked almost like respect. After a moment's consideration, he stepped back and gestured toward the open door. "I think you'd better come inside, Miss Harper. We have quite a lot to discuss." Every instinct told Lily that entering a remote cabin with two strangers was the epitome of bad decisions, regardless of how curious she might be. She remained rooted to the spot, glancing between them uncertainly. Catherine seemed to understand her hesitation. "We're not going to hurt you, Lily. In fact, we're the ones trying to help Officer Walker." Officer Walker. The name wasn't familiar to Lily, but something about the way Catherine said it carried weight. "Sergeant Pride's rider," Jason explained. "The man who wrote that note you found." Those words were the final push Lily needed. The mysteries of the past 24 hours, the injured horse, the note, the intense police response suddenly had a human face attached to them. Someone named Officer Walker needed help, and somehow, impossibly, Lily had become part of his story. With a deep breath, she stepped past Jason into the cabin. The interior was Spartan but surprisingly clean, given the exterior's state of disrepair. A table dominated the center of the main room. Covered with the maps she had glimpsed earlier, detailed topographical charts of the surrounding area, with various locations marked in red. A laptop sat open beside them, its screen showing what appeared to be satellite imagery of Millfield. "Shut the door, Jason," Catherine said, moving to clear a space at the table. "Lily, I believe it's time you understood what you've stumbled into." Over the next hour, Catherine and Jason laid out a story so incredible that Lily would have dismissed it as fiction if not for the evidence before her and the undeniable conviction in their voices. Officer David Walker, they explained, was no ordinary policeman, but an undercover federal agent who had been embedded in Millfield for the past 8 months, investigating a sophisticated wildlife trafficking operation. "Vermont's location makes it ideal," Catherine explained, pointing to various marked locations on the map, close to the Canadian border, with plenty of remote areas for transactions and temporary holding facilities. Endangered species, exotic pets, poached animal products, they move all of it through here. "But why Millfield?" Lily asked, struggling to reconcile this information with her perception of her sleepy hometown. "We're not even that close to the border." Jason nodded, acknowledging the valid question. "Because no one would suspect it. The operation is using rural towns like Millfield as waypoints, precisely because they're off the radar. Plus, they have a perfect cover. The Montgomery Wildlife Sanctuary," Catherine added, tapping a location on the map that Lily immediately recognized. The sanctuary, located just outside town, was Millfield's pride and joy, a 300-acre preserve established by the wealthy Montgomery family generations ago, now functioning as a rehabilitation center for injured wildlife and an educational facility. Lily herself had gone on numerous school field trips there, marveling at the rescued animals and dedicated staff. "That's impossible," she protested. "The sanctuary helps animals. They don't." "The sanctuary itself is legitimate," Jason interrupted gently, "but someone within it is using its resources, connections, and remote location to facilitate illegal trafficking. Officer Walker was close to identifying the key players when something went wrong." Catherine's expression darkened. 2 days ago, he missed a scheduled check-in. The last information he managed to transmit suggested he had obtained concrete evidence against several high-level targets. Then, nothing. "Until his horse showed up in your meadow," Jason concluded, with a desperate plea for help hidden under the saddle. Lily's mind reeled with this new information. The Montgomery Wildlife Sanctuary, a place she had loved since childhood, potentially connected to animal trafficking? It seemed impossible, yet the gravity with which Catherine and Jason spoke left little room for doubt. "Who are you people?" she asked finally, the question that had been lingering since their bizarre introduction. "You're not with the FBI like Agent Reed." Catherine and Jason exchanged a significant look before Catherine answered. "We're with the Wildlife Trafficking Response Unit, a specialized task force that works across different agencies. Jason and I were Officer Walker's support team, maintaining distance but ready to assist if needed." She paused, frustration evident in her voice. "We were supposed to be his backup, but someone compromised our operation. Now the FBI has taken over and they're shutting us out of our own investigation." "Why?" Lily asked, confused by the apparent conflict between law enforcement agencies. Jason's expression hardened. "Politics, jurisdictional disputes, and possibly because someone in the FBI's local office can't be trusted." The implication hung heavy in the air. If true, it meant that confiding in Agent Reed or even Officer Thompson might endanger rather than help the missing officer. "Which brings us back to you, Lily," Catherine said, her tone softening. "And that note you've been carrying around. May we see it, please?" With only slight hesitation, Lily withdrew the crumpled paper from her pocket and placed it on the table. Catherine carefully smoothed it out, her brow furrowing as she examined. "This isn't Officer Walker's handwriting," she said after a moment, glancing at Jason for confirmation. He leaned closer, studying the note. "No, it's not. But the paper is from his field notebook. I recognize the watermark." Catherine turned the note over, holding it up to the light from the window. "There's something else," she murmured, almost to herself. "Something we're missing." As they continued to examine the note, a realization slowly dawned on Lily. These people, these professionals, were as lost as she was. Despite their training and experience, they were grasping at straws, hoping for any clue that might lead them to their missing colleague. And somehow, improbably, she had become part of their desperate search. "I want to help," she said suddenly, surprising even herself with the conviction in her voice. "Whatever happened to Officer Walker, it happened in my town. Maybe I can see things you can't." Catherine and Jason exchanged a look that Lily couldn't quite interpret, something between disbelief, amusement, and grudging respect. "This isn't a game or a story," Catherine said firmly. "Officer Walker's life could be at stake." "I know that," Lily replied, struggling to convey the seriousness with which she viewed the situation. "But I know Millfield better than either of you. I've grown up exploring every inch of this town." And she hesitated, gathering her courage. "I visit the Montgomery Sanctuary at least once a week. I know the staff, the routines, even which animals are currently being rehabilitated." Jason raised an eyebrow, his expression thoughtful. "She has a point, Kath. We could use someone who doesn't raise suspicions." "We are not using a child as an informant," Catherine retorted, her tone brooking no argument. "It's dangerous and unethical." Lily bit back a frustrated reply. At 12, she hated being dismissed as a child, especially when she knew she could contribute valuable insights. Before she could formulate a compelling counter-argument, however, Jason's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His face paled as he read it. They found Walker's badge in the river about a mile downstream from the sanctuary. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted instantly, tension thickening the air. Catherine reached for her own phone, fingers flying over the screen, as she pulled up what appeared to be a map. "That matches the water current patterns," she muttered. "If he was..." She glanced at Lily and recalibrated her words. "If he was injured near the sanctuary, evidence could have been carried that distance." Lily felt a chill despite the summer warmth. The situation had suddenly become much more real, more urgent. This wasn't like the adventure books she loved. This was an actual person in actual danger. "Listen," she said, an idea taking shape. My friend Emma's mom works at the sanctuary as a veterinary assistant. I'm supposed to meet Emma today anyway. I could casually suggest we visit her mom at work. Nobody would think twice about me being there. Before Catherine could object again, Jason raised a hand. Not to gather intelligence or do anything risky, he clarified, just to be our eyes. Tell us if you notice anything unusual, new staff, restricted areas, anything that seems off from your regular visits. Catherine looked deeply unhappy with this turn of events, but after a moment's consideration, she nodded reluctantly. Observation. Only, and you carry this at all times. She produced a small device that resembled an ordinary hair clip. It's a panic button. Press it firmly 3 times in succession if you feel threatened in any way, and we'll be there immediately. Lily accepted the disguised device with a solemn nod, understanding the responsibility it represented. They spent the next 20 minutes reviewing what constituted suspicious behavior and establishing communication protocols. Catherine would pose as Lily's distant cousin, visiting from Boston, creating a natural reason for them to exchange text messages throughout the day. As Lily prepared to leave, Catherine pulled her aside for a final word. "Your courage is admirable," she said quietly. "But promise me you'll prioritize your safety. Officer Walker wouldn't want anyone else at risk on his behalf." The sincerity in her voice touched Lily deeply. This wasn't just a professional concern, but a genuine human connection. She promised, meaning it completely in that moment. The sanctuary was busy when Lily and Emma arrived later that afternoon. Summer vacation meant a steady stream of visitors eager to see the rehabilitating wildlife and participate in the educational programs. Emma's mother, Dr. Lynn Sullivan, greeted them with surprise when they appeared at the staff entrance. "I thought you girls were going biking today," she said, giving her daughter a quick hug. "Change of plans," Emma replied with a shrug. "Lily wanted to see the new fox kits that came in last week." Dr. Sullivan smiled, her fatigue evident even through her cheerful demeanor. "They are pretty adorable. Come on back, but stay out of the way if any of the staff looks busy, okay? It's been a hectic few days." As they followed Emma's mother through the familiar hallways of the rehabilitation center, Lily observed everything with new eyes. What had always seemed like the organized chaos of animal care now held potential hidden meanings. Was the new security guard at the entrance part of the trafficking operation? Did the locked door to the supply closet conceal more than medical equipment? "We've had some excitement," Dr. Sullivan was saying as she led them to the small mammal rehabilitation area. "One of our board members brought in an injured bald eagle yesterday. Beautiful specimen, but it's going to need extensive rehabilitation." "Which board member?" Lily asked, trying to sound merely curious. "Richard Montgomery himself," Dr. Sullivan replied, a note of pride in her voice. "He's been much more hands-on lately, which is wonderful for the sanctuary. His family founded this place, but the last few generations have been more distant. Now he's here almost daily." Lily filed this information away, remembering that Catherine had mentioned the Montgomery family specifically. The timing seemed significant, a suddenly involved board member, just as an investigation was underway. The fox kits were indeed adorable, 3 small bundles of russet fur tumbling over each other in a specially designed enclosure. Lily and Emma spent time watching them play, but Lily's attention was divided, taking note of staff movements and conversations happening around them. "Let's go see the birds of prey," she suggested after a while, knowing that section was closer to the administrative offices, the most likely location for any suspicious activity. As they walked, Emma chatted about school and friends, unaware of the real reason behind Lily's visit. Guilt gnawed at Lily for using her best friend this way, but she reminded herself of the stakes: a missing officer, endangered animals, and a criminal operation that needed to be stopped. The raptor rehabilitation area was housed in a separate building connected to the main facility by a covered walkway. As they approached, Lily noticed increased security, a keypad entry system that hadn't been there during her visit the previous month. When did they add that? She asked Emma casually, nodding toward the electronic lock. Emma shrugged. Mum said they've had some security upgrades recently. Something about new regulations for facilities housing endangered species. Just as they reached the door, it swung open, and Richard Montgomery himself emerged, engaged in intense conversation with another man Lily didn't recognize. Tall, imposing, with silver hair and an air of authority that seemed almost palpable, Montgomery was a familiar figure in Millfield. His family name adorned buildings throughout town, including the library and community center. The men fell silent as they noticed the girls, Montgomery's expression shifting smoothly into a practiced smile. "Young visitors, are you here to see our magnificent birds?" "Yes, sir," Emma replied, promptly. "My mum works here, she's showing us around." "Wonderful." Montgomery's attention shifted to Lily, his gaze sharpening almost imperceptibly. "And you are?" "Lily Harper," she answered, fighting to keep her voice steady under his scrutiny. "My parents own the bookstore in town." Something flickered in Montgomery's eyes. Recognition? Concern? Before his smile widened. "Harper's Literary Haven, a charming establishment. Well, enjoy your tour, ladies." As the men moved past them, Lily caught fragments of their resumed conversation. Schedule moved up, and tonight's shipment before they were out of earshot. Her heart raced with the implications. This wasn't just suspicious, it was, potentially, the confirmation Catherine and Jason needed. Throughout the remainder of their visit, Lily gathered more pieces of the puzzle. A shipping container being unloaded behind the administrative building, staff she'd never seen before moving, with military precision rather than the casual efficiency of animal caretakers. Areas suddenly off-limits due to renovations. When Dr. Sullivan finally returned to collect them, explaining she needed to finish her shift, Lily was bursting with information. She managed to contain her urgency until Emma was distracted by a call from another friend, then slipped away to send a carefully worded text to Catherine. "Cousin, the party seems to be happening tonight instead of next weekend. New decorations already arriving." The response came almost immediately. "Thanks for the update. Don't change your plans. We'll handle the rescheduling." The message was clear. She'd done her part. Now she needed to stay away. But as Lily and Emma were leaving, a commotion near the main entrance caught their attention. A familiar figure, Officer Thompson, was speaking with the sanctuary's security guard, his expression grave. Behind him, Lily could see Agent Reed and several other FBI agents approaching. "Something's happening?" Emma whispered, excitement coloring her voice. "Think it's about that missing police officer everyone's talking about?" Lily's blood ran cold. How did Emma know about that? The town's grapevine must have been working overtime. Before she could respond, she spotted Dr. Sullivan hurrying toward, and the concern etched on her face. "Girls, we need to leave now," she said, her usually calm voice tense. "There's a situation developing, and all visitors are being asked to exit immediately." As Dr. Sullivan ushered them toward a side door, Lily caught sight of Richard Montgomery emerging from his office, his face a mask of outrage as Agent Reed approached him. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Catherine and Jason must have acted on her information immediately. Outside, the sanctuary's parking lot had transformed into a law enforcement staging area. Police vehicles and unmarked FBI cars blocked the exits, and officers were stopping all departing vehicles for inspection. "What in the world?" Dr. Sullivan muttered, pulling out her phone. "Let me call your parents, girls. I don't think we're getting out of here anytime soon." While Emma's mother made calls, Lily's attention was drawn to a figure standing apart from the main law enforcement group, Catherine, now dressed in official-looking attire, complete with a badge visible on her belt. Their eyes met briefly, Across the distance, Catherine giving an almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement. The events of the next few hours unfolded like scenes from a movie. Richard Montgomery and 3 other Sanctuary board members were escorted to waiting police cars. Crates and containers were opened to reveal not just documentation, but actual evidence of trafficking exotic birds sedated for transport, rare. Reptiles in hidden compartments, even endangered wolf cubs barely old enough to open their eyes. Dr. Sullivan was horrified, repeating over and over that she'd had no idea, that none of the regular staff could have known. Lily believed her. The operation had been compartmentalized, with legitimate wildlife rehabilitation happening alongside the illegal activities, providing the perfect cover. As darkness fell, the sanctuary became a blaze of spotlights and activity. Parents arrived to collect children, news vans set up on the perimeter, and the story began to spread through Millfield like wildfire. Amid the chaos, Officer Thompson found Lily sitting with her parents on a bench near the entrance. "Quite a day, huh?" he said, sitting down beside her. "Did you find Officer Walker?" she asked, unable to contain the question any longer. Officer Thompson's expression softened. "We did. He's in the hospital in Burlington, but he's going to be okay. They had him hidden in a remote cabin on the sanctuary grounds." He studied her face carefully. "How did you know about Officer Walker, Lily?" Before she could formulate a response, a familiar voice interrupted. "She's a very observant young lady, Officer Thompson." Agent Reed stood before them, looking considerably less intimidating than he had in the barn. Beside him was Catherine, now formally introduced as Special Agent Catherine Lynch. "Your daughter provided key information that helped us connect the final dots in this case," Agent Reed told Lily's bewildered parents. "Her observations at the sanctuary today, combined with her discovery of Sergeant's Pride yesterday, gave us the timeline we needed to move in before a major shipment left the country." Sarah and Mike Harper looked at their daughter with expressions ranging from shock to pride to lingering concern. "You never mentioned any of this," her mother said faintly. "There wasn't time," Lily replied, feeling the inadequacy of those words even as she spoke them. Catherine Agent Lynch stepped forward. "If I may," she said gently, "your daughter showed exceptional judgment and courage. She was never in any danger, but her contribution was invaluable." She turned to Lily with a genuine smile. "Officer Walker asked me to convey his personal thanks. Sergeant's Pride is a good judge of character. He knew exactly who to find when he needed help." Later that night, as the excitement finally began to settle, Lily sat on her bedroom windowsill, watching the last police cars leave the sanctuary in the distance. The events of the past 2 days felt surreal, like something from one of her books, rather than her actual life in quiet Millfield. A soft knock at her door preceded her father entering with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "Thought you might still be awake," he said, handing her one. "Processing everything." Lily accepted the mug gratefully, the familiar comfort of their ritual helping to ground her spinning thoughts. "It doesn't seem real," she admitted. Her father sat beside her, looking out at the same view. "You know, your mother and I have always known you were extraordinary, Lily. Your curiosity, your attention to detail, your compassion, they're remarkable gifts." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "But what you did these past 2 days wasn't just extraordinary. It was brave in a way most adults never have to be." "I was scared," she confessed, the admission easier in the darkness of her room. "That's what makes it brave," he replied simply. "Courage isn't about not feeling fear, it's about acting despite it." He sipped his chocolate before continuing. "Officer Walker is alive because of a chain of events you set in motion. Endangered animals are safe because you paid attention when others might have looked away." The weight of it settled on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of responsibility she hadn't known she was ready to bear. "What happens now?" Now. Her father smiled. Now you go back to being Lily Harper, 12-year-old extraordinaire. School starts in 2 weeks. Your friend Emma wants to go bike riding tomorrow. Life goes on, but perhaps with a new perspective. As her father kissed her forehead and left with empty mugs, Lily turned back to the window. In the distance, the sanctuary stood dark against the star-filled Vermont sky. Things would be different there now. New leadership, renewed purpose, perhaps even a stronger commitment to the conservation work it was meant to do. And Officer Walker and Sergeant's pride would recover, carrying their own story of a summer day when an injured horse found exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. Lily smiled to herself, feeling the first stirrings of peace after days of tumult. Her father was right, life would go on. But something had changed within her. A newfound understanding of her own capacity for courage and conviction that would shape every step of the path ahead. In the quiet of her room, with moonlight streaming through the window, Lily Harper made a silent promise to the horse who had trusted her, the officers who had believed in her, and most importantly, to herself. She would never stop paying attention, never stop caring, never stop acting when it mattered most. After all, sometimes the smallest actions could create the largest ripples. And in a world where courage often seemed in short supply, perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. Dear listeners, we hope that Lily's remarkable journey with Sergeant's Pride has moved you as deeply as it has moved us. The courage of a young girl who chose to act when others might have looked away reminds us that heroes come in all sizes, and that kindness and attention to detail can change lives in ways we never expect. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories that explore the complexity of life and the unexpected connections that shape our world. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day, we bring unique stories that reveal the extraordinary in ordinary lives. Don't miss our upcoming content. The next tale might be the one that speaks directly to your heart. We're waiting to hear your thoughts in the comments below.